and welcome to MyCounselor.Online. I'm your host, Brittany East, and joining me today as our featured counselor is Sarah Cowan. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time to share your article with us today.
Of course, it's great to be here.
So I am excited to talk about your article. It's about premarital counseling. But before we do that, can you take a second to introduce yourself for those viewers who may not know you yet?
Yes, I'd love to. So, hi, I am Sarah. I have been a counselor for a little over a decade, but I've been with MyCounselor.Online now for just over 3 years, and it's been just such an honor to be here. I love this company. I love the work that we do to serve the people out there that want some extra support in their life. I have been married for almost 13 years to my amazing husband. He is in the Army, and so our life is very adventurous. I get to travel and support him, and he supports me in the work that I do. And we just recently became parents to our precious baby, who is now 7 months old, a little baby boy. And so that's a little bit about just our life. And I love just being able to get to know so many people in our personal life and in therapy. I used to lead a lot of groups and do teaching and lead family groups. And so that's a passion of mine, getting to know people and just always trying to be open-minded to the new experience out there. So
That's awesome. Well, it definitely sounds like you brought that experience to your article too. So it's titled, What to Expect When You Invest in Premarital Counseling with MyCounselor.Online. So what inspired you to write this article?
yeah, well, I am really passionate about marriage. Um, and so I believe that starts before you ever begin, dating or meeting your significant other. It really, means that if this is something as important as we say it is in life, and 93% of individuals say that one of their goals in life is to have a happy marriage. So if that's the case, we should be putting in the work on the front end. But what does that work look like? It feels important to me to help outline that for people so they're not just wandering through life trying to figure out, how do I go about having a happy and healthy marriage? And so that's, I think, what inspired me, and to help kind of get the word out there to people who are maybe on the fence or unsure what it should look like or where to go, to help them know, like, there is a place where we can support if they are wanting to work on those goals.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it is, interesting that 93% of people want to have a happy marriage, but also don't really but premarital counseling is not necessarily popular. Why do you think premarital counseling isn't more popular, even though it can lead to a longer lasting marriage?
Yeah, I think that for one, I think there's a lack of support out there, talking about
Okay.
people, or people think like, oh, it's just a couple of books and I can read those. Or if we live together,
Mm,
we'll know everything we need to know. That's a new cultural, trend over
yeah.
the last couple of decades in our society. And so I think people want to understand how to connect with their significant other and grow, but they might only be using the resources at their disposal. And so premarital counseling feels a little old-fashioned, or only
Mm.
for the church. So I'm not sure that we reach everyone that we could who could benefit from it.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense. Cause I mean, so I did premarital counseling, but it was through my church. And I don't think I would have like necessarily thought of it,
Mhm.
but it was kind of, it's part of our culture. Like, oh, if you're gonna get married, like you have to do this. But I have friends who like, didn't grow up going to church, and it was like, oh, like that was an odd, not like super weird bad, but just like, oh, that's just different. Like I didn't think how beneficial that could be. So
Mhm.
totally makes sense. Something you talk about in your article is that the counselors at MCO are trained. I'm looking at my notes so I get it right. Neuroscience informed Christian counseling. So a little bit of a mouthful. So what's the benefit of meeting with a counselor trained in this versus just getting, run of the mill premarital counseling through maybe your church or like local pastor or something?
Right. I'm so glad you asked that question. And you're right. Neuroscience informed Christian counseling is a mouthful. We call it NIC for short here. Basically, it is a module, like a modality of therapy that is very holistic. Every counselor has a special form of therapy that they provide based on their values and beliefs and training. And NIC is very holistic, and it draws from lots of the greats. When it comes to attachment focused therapy, emotion focused therapy, understanding pieces with the body, and just the physiological aspects. So if I can give an example to kind of like break it down into layman's
Yeah,
terms,
that'd be great.
understanding that one, God is our creator and he designed our bodies in very specific, intentional ways. That's the first piece of neuroscience informed Christian counseling that we want to understand. We draw in the influence of the Lord and what he does and how he created us as individuals and as human beings. And the second part of that is understanding how the nervous system works in addition to our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. So I think most people are familiar with the term fight, flight, or freeze. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. I think everyone's heard that before. And so to use that as an example in how we do our therapy, we all live experiences in life. We come up in our families of origin where we learn patterns. We have experiences that shape what's good or bad or how to function and adapt. And that wires into our very nervous system, the
Okay.
way God created our body to function and adapt and find ways to thrive. However, sometimes, like we know with fight or flight, those things that get wired into our nervous system don't always feel good. And so we
Mhm.
have these immediate reactions that our body on a subconscious level will do. And sometimes those are really helpful and they serve us well. And other times they kind of run out of their helpfulness or we start to hit a roadblock and they're not always helpful. In fact, sometimes fight or flight can cause some big consequences or cost us a lot when it happens in certain situations in our life. And so the reason I think it's really helpful to even have this type of therapy in your premarital counseling is you're not just understanding, oh, what are the ways we communicate in our future marriage? Or what kind of baggage are we bringing in? What are the basics? How do we love each other through the scriptures? Those are very important. But who's having a conversation about the way our nervous system is wired?
Yeah.
And things trigger us and it feels really personal, even though it's this person we love and are about to spend the rest of our life with. The significant other or the future spouse might not understand why things get blown up or why they retreat or what's happening in the way each other are responding to the other. And so our neuroscience informed Christian counseling brings in a spiritual component. It understands the body's influence on a subconscious level that creates these patterns. And then we draw in the emotional and relational aspect as well. So you are truly getting the most holistic model you possibly can get as you set up the foundation of your relationship. So a lot of words, but that hopefully, makes sense, the premise of what we provide here.
Yeah, I know it sounds like I mean, not that. I mean, obviously I appreciate my premarital counseling. And it did kind of bring up some things that to like work on, but obviously, yeah, kind of like you're talking, like really digging deep to go to like who we are kind of foundationally to
Mm.
kind of maybe even prevent some issues, it sounds like, down the road because you're aware like this
Yes.
is who you are, like, or like this part that you see that you don't understand, we can bring understanding to it, and with
Yes.
understanding a lot more compassion. So
Yes, it's much more preventative rather than here's some tools to tuck in your toolbox, which are good.
yeah.
So that when the things happen, it's a little bit more preventative. It's offering more understanding and it's a lot more sustainable to
Mm,
use this holistic method rather than just having tools to bring in. And that's what we want is sustainable results.
I love that. Yeah. So how many sessions can a couple expect to attend? Because it sounds like it's a lot of work. That might feel daunting to like a couple, like when they're already planning their wedding and like all these other things. So
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is. And maybe that's one of the other reasons that some people kind of put it on the back burner is they only have so much energy to give when they're dealing with wedding planning and transitioning life. But what's shocking is really you can have more effective results and success for your marriage with just 8 hours of counseling than you can actually living together for
wow.
time. 8 hours, right? 8 hours. Consider that one work day. We give up one work day for all kinds of stuff in our life, sick
Yes.
days, cheat days, going on a field trip with kids, or
Yeah.
going to that football game you got tickets for. 8 hours could actually set up your future. And so if we break that down, specifically at MyCounselor.Online, we have 45 to 50-minute sessions.
Okay.
And so about 8 hours of counseling could look like anywhere from 6 to 12 sessions. The
Okay.
sweet spot is somewhere around 8 to 10 sessions in the middle. But your counselor can customize that based on the person's goals, their financial needs, and the time that they have to invest.
Now, when you break it down, like with that mindset, like 8 hours, it's like, oh, 8 hours to set the foundation for a lifetime. Like,
Right. So, like,
then.
meanwhile, we'll spend days traveling to try on dresses and sample cake and look at venues. If you just give, 8 hours of time sprinkled in here and there. And truly, when you break it down to a 45-minute session, right? Like that's, we sit down and watch a Netflix show for that amount of time. So it's doable. I just want everyone to hear that it's doable. You can have this worked into your lifestyle.
Absolutely. And then something else in the article you brought up that, beyond being, the neuroscience, like informed Christian counseling, is that the counselors are also SYMBIS certified. I think it was
Yes.
Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts.
Yes.
So what does it mean to be certified in that? And then what insights, like why is that extra step of certification even helpful to provide for clients?
Wonderful question. So we call that SYMBIS for short, but there is the national and research-based program for saving your marriage before it starts. The reason that probably feels helpful to a lot of people that might be watching out there is a lot of churches, get trained in the SYMBIS facilitator program. And so you could either have, like, if you were seeking premarital counseling at your church, you might just get a pastor who is, experienced in counseling, and they're going to kind of do some guidance work. They might assign you some books. They'll answer your questions. Or you could get someone who's actually a church facilitator through the SYMBIS program.
Okay.
Well, we at MyCounselor.Online also have facilitators in it. So you get the most bang for your buck. You have all of it. You have a trained, experienced mental health professional who does marriage counseling, as well as someone who is trained in this version of the SYMBIS program. And what that provides you, if you desire, this is not a requirement. You don't have to come into premarital counseling and do the SYMBIS.
Okay.
But I have several couples right now who heard about SYMBIS and were out looking. And when they found out that I could also do it, they were so pleased because now they're not missing out on what they get both. And once they fill out the assessment and complete it through the organization, it sends your results back to your MyCounselor.Online counselor. And then I get a 17-page color document with all of the information and results from the assessment that the
Wow.
It's very thorough and super helpful. Most people love like personality assessments.
Yes, don't we all?
The Enneagram right now is popular. So we get a 17-page color document that talks about your strengths and weaknesses. What mindsets and value systems do you have that you're bringing in around marriage? Are you a romantic that believes that, it's love at first sight and this is till death do us part? Or are you a little bit more realistic and this is a business, arrangement for you? Those are important things to notice. And we get to understand what the implications of that might be for your relationship. Talks about your baggage that you might be bringing in and just things to help equip you so that you have all these like blind spots uncovered and you kind of know what you're working with.
No, that's really helpful. Yeah, I hadn't heard of it. We did not do that. We're still together almost 10 years. But that sounds amazing though. Yeah, you're right. We do love the breakdown of our lives. And I love that at MyCounselor.Online, you do get everything. What you're looking for, you will find. It sounds
another name. There's also a Prepare and Enrich program that's very similar to the SYMBIS. So to each their own, they're just different things, but they all kind of accomplish the same thing. And so I find that beneficial that we can do both here at MyCounselor.Online.
Definitely. And then something else you mentioned in your article, which I thought was interesting, is that sometimes you can do premarital counseling for a dating couple versus just someone who's already like they've gotten engaged, they've decided they want to be with each other. How would premarital counseling look different then for a dating couple versus like an engaged couple?
Yeah, great question. So that we can distinguish, like, what do you get out of it? Yeah. So I'll start with I'll start with the dating couple. So when we're dating, we know we care about the person we're with, right? We wouldn't be with someone that we didn't care about and have interest for, but we're not quite sure, like, is this full love? Is this in God's will? I hear a lot of people ask. Could
Yeah.
this be the kind of love that takes me, to forever? And so when you're dating, you have all these questions and you take it very seriously and you don't want to get it wrong, but you
Yeah.
also know you're in this important relationship that's taking your time and your energy. And so by investing in a little bit of premarital work, we come in with a very different goal rather than preparing for the transition from dating, engagement, and marriage. We're working on where are you at as a dating couple and how can I help you know if you're ready to
Wow.
take this relationship to the next level and to the next
Okay.
step. So we work on uncovering some value systems. We
Okay.
understand the patterns of their dating relationship and how they interact with one another. We help them to communicate more openly about things that might be of concern so that they can already have a good foundation for communicating honestly and safely with one another. But also, it just brings clarity to the relationship. And best case scenario, people are able to walk away saying, like, wow, okay, I feel really good. I know you're the person I want to go to the next level with based on these conversations.
Wow.
Worst case scenario, we're honest about our feelings
Yeah.
and we prevent heartbreak or misunderstandings for later down the road. And we
Yeah.
can have a mutual conversation of, wow, we really have loved one another, but we realize that we might not be the best fit for a marriage together. And we care enough to part ways. And it can be done in a really kind, mutual way. I don't see that very often, but I've been able to help people and couples, and many of us counselors have, just be honest and use their voice and be just forthcoming. And I think both of those outcomes are really important and honoring of the person that we are.
Yeah. No,
So,
definitely.
so that's the dating aspect.
Yeah.
If I can speak into the what's different about the engaged couple doing premarital counseling, that's where you already know I'm ready. Like we have made the commitment, we've got the ring, we've set a date. Maybe not. Maybe we're working on the date. And so during your premarital counseling, your counselor can either help you finalize details and understand what kind of wedding and marriage you want to build during this transition
Mm.
period. We can uncover some of the subconscious patterns, the way in which we relate to one another. We can talk about how to transition from a life of single person dating to what kind of married couple do you want to be? Will you, bring your finances together or not?
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
how will you raise a family? Where will you live? How do you handle holidays when now you have competing families or friends that expect all of your time and you suddenly have to share? So um, the transition period is a little bit more of the focus during the premarital work, in addition to building a healthy foundation for the future. So,
Awesome. Yeah, no, that totally brings a lot of clarity, and I appreciate that. It definitely, I think at the end of the day, people just like we are hoping to be honest with ourselves and with someone else so that, like you said, preventing heartbreak, as much as possible. Heartbreak is part of life, but just like keeping people
true,
safe, sounds like.
true.
Um, oh, go ahead. Sorry, we were gonna say.
I don't know that I wrote about this. I'd like to just drop one extra piece in here while we're
Yeah,
talking.
please do.
I've also had couples who are already married and or maybe they are widowed or divorced and they're looking at maybe getting married for the second time. So this isn't just for people in their 20s and 30s who are investing in their future. This can be people who are later in the life scene and they're
Wow.
coming back around, or they're already married and they realize, like, hey, there's a gap. We don't want to just jump straight into counseling. We really want to go back and fill in what we didn't before, and it's never too late. I have lots of individuals, especially in the military community. Sometimes they are forced to do a courthouse wedding because that's the only way that they can live together. But
Yeah.
then they have to go live together and move and follow one another. And they're filling in and preparing their wedding at that point. So there's really no special time. As long as you're investing in your marriage, it can be at any point in your journey together.
Thank you for dropping. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. Something I was curious about, and I can't remember. I obviously I did fully read your article, but oh yeah, okay, it did bring about it. So, was we talked about like we're setting up like how we are as patterns as people, like what are we expectations or like for the future. Are sexual expectations or guidance provided in premarital counseling? I know, at least in the Christian community, sometimes it's like tricky, or it seems like some people come in and they are fully prepared for like that aspect of their marriage. And other people, it's like, we don't talk about it literally until you're married.
Yeah.
And so I was curious about the approach that MCO takes with couples who are in the premarital, like how that goes, because sex is such a big part of marriage. So yeah, I was just curious what your take on it was.
Of course. Yeah, sex is one of the things that kind of sets apart a best friendship with, your partner, and now we're a married couple. That's the thing that kind of makes it so special and intimate, in addition to other pieces. But however, like, how do we bridge the gap from our life of singleness, other dating relationships, experiences we've had, and how do we comfortably, safely, and appropriately bring that into the married relationship with our partner? And you're right, everyone, yeah, sexuality is such a private, special, intimate thing. Fun fact, I actually love working with my sex therapy couples. It's such an honor and a privilege. If you had told young Sarah 10 years ago that she would enjoy that, I would have been very shocked. So it's funny to hear how much I love working with my sex therapy couples today. And maybe another reason why I'm passionate about helping people in the premarital stage, because everyone's sexuality and their journey through that can be very unique and different. Whether people had a lot of experiences and they're bringing those into their marriage, or whether they have no sexual experiences and they're bringing that into their marriage. Either way, we want to create a bridge that helps them bring that part of their life and join it with the new life that they're building in a very honoring way, but a very intentional way. That conversation should be had with your partner preparing for that. The fact that, the church especially teaches, hey, shut this down. Abstinence is the thing. God says sex is going to be amazing after marriage, but don't even talk about it or breathe about it until then. And so for a lot of men and women, especially women, just based on cultural dynamics, this gatekeeper role is kind of adopted. And a lot of Christians that grow up in the church, especially if you were one that grew up through purity culture, that was a very unique period. So they grow up saying like, this is not good, like turn my body off to this.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you say, I do. And you go home or to the hotel with your special person now, and you're just supposed to turn that part of your body and your life back on after years of suppressing it. For some people, they do a phenomenal job of turning it on and they have a delightful time. Other people are left very curious or grieved and surprised by the results that they're having during their honeymoon time, to realize like, wow, I was not prepared, or why isn't my body doing what it's supposed to do so? And so because the counselors at MyCounselor.Online are also Christian trained sex therapists, we love to be able to help bridge the gap, to create safe spaces for these conversations. They're very private but honoring, so that whether you're coming with a lot of confident experiences or you're coming with no experiences in sexuality, we can help create the sex life and the marriage that God's called you to. There's no cookie cutter approach. We really like to help each couple customize who God has called them to be. And so that's an aspect that we can provide that some churches are comfortable with and others aren't, because it's just a very private conversation. And so we're very honored to be able to provide that here at our organization.
I love that. Yeah. And I love, just like you kind of talked about multiple times too, just like such broad training, broad scope that a lot of the counselors have, so that kind of like no matter what comes up during premarital, it sounds like they're prepared. It's there's not like a topic that's like, oh, actually.
Yeah, we're pretty good at having lots of different conversations. We're not thrown off very easily. And so even if conversations around sexual dysfunctions or trauma or just, the innocence of, which is a good thing, but also saying, hey, we want to help you feel confident, competent, and comfortable. We've done the work on our part to make the safe space to have the comfortable conversation. So I'm thankful that you can acknowledge that with us.
Yeah. So what final piece of advice would you give to people watching this?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I just hope that the viewers that are watching, that they feel interested and curious about what this could mean for their relationship, and helps them to begin thinking like, where do I stand if I'm in a relationship now, or if I'm not, but I desire one? I hope that it gets the wheels turning, and that there's some intentional thought behind, like, what should I do to prepare for my future, to make sure that I'm proud of who I'm marrying, I'm confident in my why, and that I feel ready and equipped for what's coming my way. I think that's my biggest tip and encouragement is just stay curious. And if you have any more questions, we have lots of counselors. We have matching specialists here to be able to help have conversations. And we have a special, opportunity where if you come for your first session and you don't like it, we can write that for you. But so really, there's no, loss to coming in, at least giving it a try. So that would be my biggest tip for those that are watching and interested. Invest in your marriage. It pays off.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to share just your wisdom, your passion, just for wanting marriages to be successful, not even for the sake of the marriage, but just for the sake of people feeling safe in the decisions they make. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here, Brittany.
Yeah, and thank you for everyone who joined us today to watch or listen. If you want to look at our other videos that we've done, you can go to our Facebook and Instagram and search Love My Counselor. The biggest archive of videos will be on YouTube. And if you go on there, you'll search MyCounselor.Online Christian Counseling. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on My Counselor Online.